All right, hi everyone. Welcome back to week number 2 of the fourth quarter digital learning. This one's going to be on volume. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you printed out your notes or you're following along with your notebook. Remember, they can be found under the Files tab in Canvas. The warm-up is also located in there. That's if you wanted to print it out and follow along on there, or again, you can just do all this in a notebook. So take about the next 8 to 10 minutes to go over these 4 questions on the warm-up. When you're ready, pause the video, and when you're ready to go over them, unpause the video. Here we go. Once you're ready, so the number one says a Pizza Hut has a diameter of 12 inches. They split the pizza or divided it into 8 slices, and we want to find the area of each slice. Well, the first thing I did was just kind of go over the information that was given in the problem. I took a pizza, I cut it into 8 slices. I listed my radius as 6 and my diameter is 12. Well, I know this is an area problem, so I know that pi, or 3.14, times the radius to the second power would be able to tell me the area. But since I just want one of the 8 pieces from the pizza, I'm going to also multiply my area times 1/8. So again, I listed my radius and my diameter. I'm not using my diameter because my formula uses the radius. So pi, or 3.14, times 6 to the second power times 1/8 would mean that the area of one slice of pizza would be approximately 14.1 inches. Number 2, probability question. A student reaches into a bag with the word probability spelled in it. What is the probability that the student draws a P, does not replace it, and then draws an O? So the first thing I did was I wrote out the word probability, and then I thought to myself, well, how many letters are in the word probability? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 total letters. They want to know what is the probability of getting a P first. Well, I know that there's 1 out of 11 letters that represent a P, and I'm going to multiply that. Well, something happens here. They take this P out and they don't put it back in the box or the bag. Then I have to think to myself, well, how many letters are left? Well, they started with 11, so now there's only 10 left, and now I'm looking for the probability of getting an O. There's one O. So my probability of getting a P, 1 out of 11, times the probability of getting an O if I don't replace the P, when I multiply it, would be 1 out of 110, or answer choice A. Number 3 talks about a blueprint. So I'm thinking scale ticket problem. 3/4 of an inch is the same as or represents 6 feet. If the deck is actually 24 feet wide, how wide would be the deck in inches on the blueprint? So first thing, I'm comparing my units of inches to feet. So I stack them as a ratio, inches over feet. My given ratio was the two numbers in the same sentence represented with the equal sign. So 3/4 over 6. And I'm going to set that equal to the other information that was given to me. Well, they said 24 feet. So I think, where in my ticket did I put feet? I put in the denominator on the bottom. So that's where I put 24. X goes on top to represent how many inches that I don't know at this point. From there, I can cross multiply. 6 times x is 6x. 0.75 times 24, or 3/4 times 24, is 18. I have 6 times x equals 16. Well, the opposite of timesing by 6 is to divide each side by 6. And I would find out that 3 inches would represent 24 feet on the blueprint. And the last one, number 4, we want to determine the total distance around this figure. So the first thing that I did was I kind of just broke it into 2 different shapes. So I think to myself, well, I'm going to just kind of highlight here. What would be the distance going around this figure? Well, if I go travel here and here, I already know that I traveled 8 centimeters and 5 centimeters. Okay, well, this is perimeter. I'm going around the figure, so 8 plus 5. Well, I also have to go across the top here. Well, I have to think to myself, well, how far would I have traveled if I went there? Well, if the bottom is 8, that means the top would also have to be 8 up here. Okay, so then I know I'm going to have to add another 8, but I still have to go around this rounded curve, and I'm going to change that to a different color here. Around this green curve here, well, I have to think to myself, well, how do I find the distance around a curve? Well, that would be circumference. Well, I know to find the circumference, it's pi, or it's 3.14, times the diameter. Well, in this picture, the diameter is actually 5 because the left side represents 5. So this line that goes straight across would also be 5. So I'm going to multiply that times 5, but I also have to think to myself, I have a semicircle, so I'm also going to have to multiply this times 1/2, or 0.5. Once I do that, I'll be able to calculate that missing curve. So in a calculator, I would do 3.14 times 5 times 0.5, or 1/2, and I would find out that that curve, or this circumference of that semicircle would be 7.85, depending on what you did in a calculator, if you use a pi button or not, but it'll be approximately that. Now I know that the last dimension, or that green curve that I highlighted before, would be 7.85. When I combine all of these numbers, the distance around the entire figure, again, the bottom would be 8 centimeters, the left side would be 5, the top we determined from the bottom is another 8, and then we calculated the green curve, or the circumference of the semicircle over here off to the side. When I add those three numbers together, I would end up getting 28.85, or again, your decimals may be off depending on what you use for pi down below. All right, so that ends our warm up for today. Next thing you're going to see in your notes is going to be your daily dose of algebra. Again, I would pause the video at this time, solve these three problems by distributing and combining like terms. When you're ready to go over it, unpause the video and I'll be here. So first one, we had -2 times the quantity of a plus 5 minus 4a. First thing I did was, again, I did my little over under. So first thing, I did -2 times -2. Why won't my pen work? Here we go. -2 times a, which gave me -2a. -2 times +5 gives me -10. And then I'm just dropping down -4a because it's not inside my parentheses. From there, I would use some kind of coding system to help say, hey, these things go together. I combine -2a and -4a. Same sign, add and keep. -2 minus 4 is -6. And then -10 is all by itself because it has nothing to combine with. Second question, I have -3 times the quantity of x plus 7y, and then I have -2x plus 2y. First thing again, I over under, -3 times x gives me -3x, -3 times +7y. Again, I knew this is positive because of the symbol that was in front of it. Right here, this positive sign lets me know, hey, that's a +7, and -3 times +7 was -21y. And again, I drop down -2x plus 2y because they're outside the parentheses. From there, I'm going to combine my x's with my x's. I have -3x minus 2x. Again, being careful of my symbols, -3 minus 2 gave me -5. And then I have -21y plus 2y, different sign, subtract, keep the sign of the larger number, and I would end up with -19y. Again, the order, it does not matter. You could have had -19y minus 5x, give you the same exact equivalent answer. And then very last one at the bottom, okay, we have x minus 4 minus 3 times the quantity of 2x plus 11. Again, just because this x plus minus 4 is in the front, I'm going to drop that down. But notice I did not drop down the negative sign in front of that 3. That is what I'm actually going to distribute to those parentheses. So -3 times 2x is -6x, and -3 times +11 was -33. From there, I can combine my like terms. I have x minus 6x, that's where I got -5x, and then -4 minus 33 would give me -37. All right, moving on to the next page. Now we're going to get into today's lesson. How can the volume of three-dimensional figures be determined? This is going to be a lot similar to last week's lesson. The only difference today is we're actually going to work backwards with volume. So first thing, the activator today is going to determine the value of x in the following figure. Now let's read the question. The figure below has a total volume of 250 cubic centimeters. Use the volume formula to determine the value of x. So I have a triangular prism here. They've given me my base and my height of my triangle, but they have not told me the height of the entire prism. But they did tell me the volume. So a couple of things. First off, I'm just going to make some notes as to what this problem told me. Well, it told me it's a volume problem. It says it right there. Volume is equal to the area of the base times the height of the prism. We know that is a fact from last week's lesson. They also told us in this problem what would be the total volume. So this is something that we solved for last week, but now today they're giving us the volume and they're asking us what would be the height of this prism, or what would be the value of x, in order to make sure that the total space that's occupied by this three-dimensional triangular prism would be 250 cubic units. Well, again, let's go back to what we know is true of our area and volume formula. We know that to find volume, it's the area of the base times the height of the prism. And in this problem, we have a triangular prism. So I know that the area of the base is 1/2 times the base of the triangle times the height of the triangle, but I still can't forget for volume to multiply it times the height, or how tall the entire structure is. Well, in this problem, again, they gave us the base and the height, so I just kind of started to fill in the information that I know is true. Well, I know that the base was 10 and the height was 10, because here's my right angle, so that I know that if I do 1/2 times 10 times whatever x is, or the height of that prism, it would equal 250. Again, all I did was change variables for what their values that I knew right now were. The volume right here is 250, so I took V out and I put in 250. I knew that 1/2 times the base, 10, times the height, 10, times the height would give me that 250. Well, I can do some combining like terms here. I can do 1/2 times 10 times 10. That would give me 50 in a calculator. So now that I know that 250 is the same as 50 times the height, or how tall the structure is. Well, in order to isolate the height, or the value of x, all I have to do is use my inverse operations by dividing each side by the coefficient. In this case, it would be 50. So 250 divided by 50 would tell us that the height of this prism would be 50. And again, that makes sense, because if I check my work in a calculator, I do 1/2 times 10 times 10 times 50, I would get 250 cubic units. So again, this is really similar to last week. It's just we're going to work backwards. We're going to take one piece out of our formula for volume out, and we're going to solve for whatever that missing piece is. Next one we're going to go over is a rectangular prism. Again, we're just using volume in algebra and determining what information is given and how can I use that information to solve for what is missing. The volume of the figure to the left is 168 cubic units. So again, we know that the inside filled up would be 168 cubic units. What is the height of the prism? Well, right here, they have not told me what the height is. Right here, this line, we don't know what the value of the height is. But again, we do know some things in this problem. The first thing we know is that it's a volume problem. They tell us that right there. So I'm going to start with my formula. I'm going to substitute what I know. Well, I know that to find the volume of a rectangular prism, it's the area of the base times the height of the prism. Well, how do I find the area of the base of a rectangle? That's length times width. And again, to find volume, I multiply that times the height. So again, I'm just going to start replacing variables, things that I know from the problem. Up here, it told me what the volume was. It said the volume is 168 units. So I plugged that in for my volume. Over here, if I look at my picture, they gave me a length of 7, a width of 4, and again, it was asking us, what is this height? So the length is 7, the width was 4. Once I fill out all the information I can for my formula, if I only have one variable missing, in this case the height, I can work backwards and solve for that. I can combine what I know. I know that 7 times 4 is 28, and that 168 equals 28 times the height. Again, if I isolate the height by dividing by the coefficient 28, 168 divided by 28 would mean that the height would have to be 6. So again, we're going back up here. Now we know that that question mark was really 6 inches tall. And if we multiply 7 times 4 times 6 in a calculator, we would get 168 cubic units. All right, at this point, you should feel pretty confident about trying some of these on your own. So when you get to this slide, I would go ahead and try this one. Little hint, this one is very similar to the previous problem that we just went over together. Okay, so if you need a picture, I would think about this picture and just substitute the information. Pause the video at this time. When you're ready, unpause it, and I'll be here waiting. All right, let's go over this one. So this one says a right rectangular prism has a volume of 240 cubic centimeters. The prism has a base that measures 4 by 6 centimeters. That's a length and a width. What is the height of the prism? Again, we're working backwards with volume. So I started off with my volume formula. Volume equals the area of the base times the height of the prism. Well, I know that in order to find the area of a rectangular prism, right here, it told us what kind of shape we're working with, a rectangular prism, that it's length times width for the area of the base times, again, the height of the prism to find its volume. From there, I just started substituting the information again that was given. Again, they gave us a lot of good information in this problem. They told us that the volume is 240 cubic inches, that it has measurements of a base, which is length times width, of 4 and 6. Again, I'm going to do all the math I can. 4 times 6 is 24, times the height should give me 240. Working backwards, I'm going to divide each side by the coefficient 24. 240 divided by 24 in a calculator would be 10. And again, if I wanted to check my work, all I'd have to do is 4 times 6 times 10. I would put that in a calculator, and it would work out to 240 cubic units. All right, last one. Again, I would pause the video and give this one a try. When you're ready, unpause the video, and I'll be here. All right, here we go with this one. It says the volume of the prism shown at the left is 80 cubic meters. What is the height of the prism? Again, they give us the area of the base. They tell us that it's a volume problem. They tell us how much space or volume it occupies, and we need to work backwards to solve for this one. So again, I work with my volume formula, length times width times height for a rectangular prism. Again, all I did was plug in some information that I got from the word problem. It told me that the volume is 80 cubic um, meters and that the length was 2, the width was 5. So 2 times 5 would give me the area of the base. Again, when I go down and do the math, I did 2 times 5 is 10. And I know that 80, the volume, is equal to 10 times whatever the height would be. I can divide each side by what I know, the coefficient of 10. 80 divided by 10 would mean that the height of this structure would have to be 8. And again, that makes sense when I take out the variable z and I plug in 8. 2 times 5 times 8 would give me 80 cubic meters. Hopefully this lesson went pretty well for you today. Today's activity directions are posted on this one right here. You're going to use the bit.ly posted to your classwork located on Canvas. Watch the tutorial video of how to use the discussion board for today's activity, and that bit.ly is actually discussion tutorial. So if you want to learn how to get today's grade and you have not seen it already, I would watch this video bit.ly discussion tutorial, because today's grade is going to actually be a discussion question, not a normal bit.ly. So after you watch that, you're going to leave a response to the question that's posted below. I will be grading the activity based on the following. Did you answer the post? Did you explain your answer? And did you get the question correct? So this question right here, discussion question 4.2a, a right rectangular prism has a total volume of 1,000 cubic meters. The width of the base is 5 meters. The length of the base is 10 meters. What is the height of the prism? Explain your answer. You're going to go into Canvas. You're going to go to the discussions tab. Again, all this can be found by watching the bit.ly in the top. Answer that question, and it should be an easy grade for today. Once you're done that, you are done for today, and you can move on to the next lesson. And make sure you're staying current with all your Zoom lessons and staying on top of your schedule. Hope you have a great day.